Upheaval, Reckoning, Chapter 29, Lion Rampant. Morning in Canterlot found Rarity not out shopping or even in Hammerchain's smithy, but roaming the royal palace's hallways. She had woken up in the royal palace, expecting to meet the rest of her friends for breakfast. She did so with only one of them. Fluttershy looked so heartbroken at the sight of the empty dining hall that Rarity felt like apologizing, despite not having done anything wrong. She did, however, harbor a suspicion that her other friends were not exactly absent because they wanted to be. When Fluttershy had flown off to assist Redbrand again, she went to investigate. Though she abhorred violence and preferred to work her craft in peace, Rarity was tired of this. She was tired of being left in the background while Twilight Sparkle, Rainbow Dash, and Applejack took to the front lines. She glanced at the belt she wore around her midriff. Attached to it were her mage blades, sheathed in leather of her own design. She could fight. She had thought about that encounter with Nightmare Moon back in Bastion City. She didn't have Twilight Sparkle's magical muscle, but she knew she could do her part if she put her mind into it. It bothered her greatly that she had given so little in helping her friends, and all of Equestria, for that matter.
"She joined what?"
some pony exclaimed. Rarity recognized Shining Armor's voice. She spotted him farther down the hall, talking to a couple of Legionnaires.
"Is something wrong, Captain Shining Armor?"
she asked. Shining Armor turned to see who was talking to him, while the Legionnaires went their way. The scowl on his face took Rarity aback. Seeing her discomfiture, he quickly calmed himself.
"Miss Rarity," he said, "did you know anything about this?"
"Know anything about what?"
"Twily joining up with the Legion's special operations. Applejack, too."
"Well..."
Rarity looked away in embarrassment. It didn't take much for her to assume that they had joined Vanguard's squad.
"I might have suspected something."
Inside, she found herself cursing at Vanguard Clash. Twilight Sparkle and Applejack? He obviously didn't understand the situation. Either that, or he was the biggest fool in all of Equestria.
"Special operations," Shining Armor said. "It's not enough that she joined the Legion. She had to join the group that gets into the most dangerous situations. And she couldn't even be bothered to tell me first."
"Imagine that," Rarity said flatly. "Wait, do you know where Twilight is right now?"
"Third Squad went off in search of Rainbow Dash and Scarlet Rabbit."
"Search for Rainbow Dash? Why? What happened to her?"
As Shining Armor explained the situation, the frustration continued to build within Rarity. First, Rainbow had disappeared with Scarlet Rabbit. She had warned that mare about how dangerous Scarlet was, but Rainbow didn't listen.
"Of course she didn't listen," she thought. "As a matter of fact, my warning probably made her want to do it even more."
That she had been left here without knowing what had happened up until now was galling. Rainbow Dash was her friend, too. She did not appreciate being made to sit around because no pony told her. That only left her with a more irritating question. Even if she had been told earlier, what could she have done? Shining Armor suddenly stopped and looked past Rarity. She followed his gaze and noticed a group of ponies walking down the hall and towards them. At the center of the group was a white unicorn mare with a silvery blue mane. Around her were 4 heavily armored Legionnaires. Rarity recognized the band of metal around the mare's horn as a hornlock, a device used to suppress magic.
"Who's that?"
she asked Shining Armor.
"That's the prisoner they brought in from Fangbreaker Fortress,"
Shining Armor replied. His eyes narrowed.
"Why are they walking around like that?"
As the prisoner came closer, Rarity noticed that her coat wasn't actually white, but a pale blue. Even though she was clearly under careful watch and surrounded, the unicorn walked with dignity, as if the hornlock was a medal rather than a restraint. She caught sight of Rarity, and her eyes widened. "Element of generosity," she said. For a moment, Rarity could only stare. The unicorn mare spoke in such a deep and masculine voice that she thought one of the Legionnaires had spoken instead. The group stopped. Eventually, Rarity found her voice.
"You know who I am?"
she asked.
"I know what you are and what your name is, Rarity, bearer of the element of generosity,"
the unicorn replied. She turned toward Shining Armor.
"I won't presume to know who you are, though." "And may I know your name?"
Rarity asked.
"I am Blue Moon, former captain of the Thorns, and brother to Black Rose."
Blue Moon said the name, and everything that accompanied it, proudly. That he called himself brother made it clear to Rarity that he was a stallion. not a mare.
Black Rose's brother,
Shining Armor said. He turned towards the Legionnaires.
Why is he being paraded out here then?
Prince's orders, one of the Legionnaires replied. I proved cooperative and true to my stated intention of turning against Black Rose, Blue Moon added with a slight smile. The Prince has seen it fit to let me stretch my legs and see the sun my sister is in charge of now.
Your sister's sun will set soon and never rise again,
Shining Armor said in a low tone. I certainly hope so, Blue Moon replied. My sister has dealt many a horrid fate towards her enemies, but she reserves a special hatred for those who turn against her. I would hate to have her win in the end.
Wait,
Rarity said.
You said you were once the leader of the Thorns.
I did.
Then you must know a lot of Black Rose's plans. Where is Rainbow Dash?
I've already told the Legion every scrap of information I have, Blue Moon replied, including what I do know of Black Rose's plans with you bearers. I'm sorry. All I know is that she assigned Longstride to her.
A sign? What do you mean?
Rarity listened intently. Beside her, Shining Armor did the same. Black Rose assigned a bearer to each member of the Thorns, Blue Moon said. Our mission was, in her own words, put them through adversity. She believes that it is only by passing through danger and hardship that the elements will rise to their truest potential.
The nerve,
Rarity said.
You mean to say she's putting us to the test? Does she think she knows better than the elements of harmony? Who does she think she is?
You don't understand, Blue Moon said quietly.
Then help me understand.
Blue Moon's face hardened, as did his voice. We are sick and tired of waiting for our rulers to change, waiting for the elements to act, waiting for some form of justice to rain down from the eternal herd. No more. This much I agreed with my sister. There will be no more waiting around. We will take everything into our own hooves. If Celestia won't change her mind about her barrier, we will force her to change her mind. If the elements of harmony are not up to the task, we will force them to be up to the task. If the bearers fail, let them die so some pony more worthy can be chosen.
If you believe that, then why did you betray your group? Shining Armor asked.
Black Rose betrayed me, Blue Moon snapped. She's reached too far. We are mortals in the end, and she's forgotten that. But I've already explained myself to the Prince. He turned his attention back to Rarity. Your friend is the bearer of the element of loyalty. I left the group before Longstride could explain his plan, but it will be her loyalty that will be tested. His hardened expression gave way. The only thing I can offer beyond that is that he is not tasked to assassinate her. If your friend endures, then he will personally ensure that she is returned.
What if she fails?
Then his arrows will find her heart.
How arrogant!
Rarity stomped her hoof.
Playing judge and jury over a pony like that. Rainbow may be brash and a little foolish, but she doesn't deserve this adversity.
No pony does, Blue Moon said. His eyes narrowed. I understand your worry for your friend, Miss Rarity. However, I'd be more concerned about you.
Me?
Rarity asked.
Why me? I'm still here in Canterlot, not wandering off or joining dangerous missions.
You are Lion Court's assignment. He went so far as to personally request for you. That your blood doesn't freeze goes to show how little information about him remains intact. Rarity swallowed and felt a bead of sweat slowly trickle down the side of her face. It wasn't even particularly warm in the palace.
Why?
She asked. She remembered the coincidental appearance of a book that would help her. A book penned down by the legendary Lion Court. Don't let the refined manners fool you should you meet him, Blue Moon went on. If you fail, you will wish for Longstride's arrows, or Sable's poisons, even for Frenzy Heart's stone blade if he was still around. You'll wish for all of those and 100 other deaths than what you'll get at the hooves of Lion Court. If I were you, element of generosity, I'd focus my concern for myself. With that, Blue Moon walked past the two.
Where are you going?
Shining Armor asked. Outside. Blue Moon didn't look back. I need some sun. Celestia's or Black Rose's. It doesn't matter after spending days in a dungeon. With Blue Moon gone, Shining Armor looked at Rarity.
Are you all right?
He asked.
Yes, I'll be fine,
Rarity replied. With a nod, Shining Armor also walked off. She remembered the information on the thorns she read. Lioncourt was known for wielding mage blades. She had considered the possibility of having to fight him at that point. They wielded the same weapons, after all. He must have felt something similar when his group was reviewing each bearer of the elements of harmony. She glanced towards her mage blades again. What should she expect from Lioncourt? He was supposed to specialize in duels, but a duel would not be a test of generosity. She shook her head.
I'll deal with that when it comes, she thought. Right now, it's Rainbow Dash who needs help.
An idea came to mind as Rarity left the royal palace. She was Lioncourt's assignment, one that he expressed a great deal of interest in. Why else would he go out of his way to pick her, then place a book of his own writing for her benefit? There was a good chance that he was tracking her, if he wasn't observing her right now. She could find out a lot if she could talk to him. But how could she bait him into coming out? Canterlot was a big city with enough nooks and crannies to hide an army of spies, and it was probably doing just that with both the Legion's and Black Rose's agents running about. Though Rarity had also read up on the descriptions of the thorns, it was unlikely that she'd spot Lioncourt by simply searching for him. However, Blue Moon's warning contained the clues she needed. Don't let the refined manners fool you, he had said. The thorn assigned to her was a pony of refinement, even if it was just for show. Perhaps she could appeal to that. Rarity made her way through Delicacy Street, where many of Canterlot's finest restaurants had their establishments. There she picked one of her favorites, a small but elegant place just by the corner of the street. Cold Snap and Heat Waves belonged to a couple of Pegasus stallions, brothers who specialized in Manhattan cuisine.
A table for two, please, she told the waiter.
She had eaten a light breakfast and should still have room for a little brunch. The waiter showed her to her table and offered her the menu.
I'll have a Manhattan omelet with extra tomatoes.
I'll just have the lettuce salad,
Rarity said. The waiter bowed slightly and walked off.
Well, this is certainly a nice place you've picked, Lioncourt said. It's a pity that there appears to be very few customers.
Well, it's not really rush hour, is it? Rarity replied.
True.
Rarity stopped, then looked at the stallion sitting across the table from her. She nearly stood up. Lioncourt! How did he... Instinctively, her horn glowed as she enveloped her mage blades with magic. Lioncourt had entered the place, sat next to her, and was making small talk before she could realize what was going on. It didn't even make sense as to how she was able to recognize him.
I like the way you think, Miss Rarity, Lioncourt said. You're probably the only bearer who would actually consider sitting down and talking to one of the thorns. Please relax. I'm not here to assassinate you. You invited me to a meal, and I accepted.
Rarity continued to stare. Lioncourt's dark blonde mane certainly lived up to his namesake. He was wearing a deep red suit, and the sword belt around his torso displayed 3 long blades. He sat with an easy, casual manner, as if he was at home entertaining a guest, instead of being in a city full of enemies.
How did you do that? She asked. One would think you'd be quickly noticed with that bold color you have on.
She let go of her mage blades.
Pardon?
Lioncourt asked.
You know what I'm talking about.
Ah, you mean my little introductions bypass. Lioncourt, unicorn mage, served as a diplomat and spy, credited with 200 kills from formal duels, specializes in mind-affecting magic, and uses the extremely rare skill of mage blade wielding. That's what it says on my description, correct? You let your guard down. It's easy to fiddle with the mind's recognition ability.
He looked at his suit.
Do you think dark red is a little too much for this occasion? I have a fondness for the color.
He tilted his head at her.
I think you would look lovely in it.
That was rather rude of you to do so, Rarity said. A gentle colt would introduce himself.
Rude, but necessary, I'm afraid,
Lioncourt replied. His smile widened, and Rarity could have sworn she saw the hint of a fang in his mouth.
I'm here not just as a gentle colt, but as something of a tutor as well. Sharp blade, sharp mind. I wrote that in the first chapter. We won't have much of a dance together if I can easily convince you that left is right and right is left.
Then you really should give me more than a couple of days to read up on your work.
Rarity kept her face placid when she replied. She refused to let Lioncourt keep her off balance. Lioncourt rested his head on a foreleg.
Enough of my reasons, he said. What could the element of generosity want with me?
To the point, then, Rarity said. One of my friends has gone missing. I would like to know where she is.
That would be Rainbow Dash, Lioncourt said. Seeing as Sable would have to be insane to abduct Pinkie Pie, and the mistress isn't the sort to be so direct.
Pinkie Pie has been assigned to Sablesteel, Rarity noted. If Blue Moon's information is correct, Black Rose has probably assigned 2 of us to herself. Maybe even 3 since he defected.
She smiled politely at Lioncourt, just to match the one he had.
So where is she now?
Lioncourt leaned a little closer.
I just might answer that. First, what are you going to offer me? Negotiations go both ways, you know.
Rarity steeled herself for the worst. 100 other deaths, Blue Moon had said.
Well, what would you like in return?
She asked. The waiter returned with their orders. For a few minutes, both of them simply enjoyed their food. At least, Rarity tried to. It was difficult to enjoy anything when the enemy was sitting across the table.
How about we play a little game?
Lioncourt asked as he finished off the last of his omelet. Rarity raised an eyebrow.
You'd barter your organization's plans over a game.
Lioncourt looked around him. The few customers in the place had started to leave. Rarity noticed that his horn was glowing as he watched the last pony in the room.
Actually, I'm bartering the advancement of Longstride's plans for the advancement of mine. The truth be told, just making him work hard enough to change that stony expression of his would be worth it if I stood to gain little else.
Rarity watched as the last of the customers left.
You controlled their minds, she said.
I don't have the magical strength to do something so drastic and direct,
Lioncourt replied.
I just gave them that annoying feeling that they should be off doing something else that they haven't quite remembered yet. They're hoping that it will come to them on the way. We should get some privacy for a quarter of an hour or so.
Assuming no pony else decides to enter, Rarity said.
The sign outside now says closed. A little favor from one of our agents.
Lioncourt's horn flashed again, and the curtains by the windows closed.
And the staff?
Rarity asked. A shout from the kitchen served as an answer.
Also indisposed,
Lioncourt said.
Don't worry, no harm will be done.
The dark atmosphere within one of her favorite spots in Canterlot perturbed Rarity.
So what is this game you're proposing, then?
She asked, her tone still confident.
I propose a duel,
Lioncourt said.
Mage blades, of course. No mind tricks of any sort from me.
And how will that facilitate any information exchange?
Lioncourt stood up and scratched his neck.
The rules are simple,
he said.
For each cut we inflict on the other, I will answer one question honestly.
The blades on his belt unsheathed themselves and floated above him in a ring with points out. Each blade was about 3 times as long as hers. One had a delicately curving edge, the other was a narrow thrusting weapon, and the third was slightly shorter, but had a wide blade. Rarity pulled out her own mage blades and spun 3 blades in front of her in a triangular pattern.
I hope you brought plenty of bandages, she said. I mean to ask plenty of questions.
That's the spirit,
Lioncourt said. Rarity's 4th blade suddenly flew from its hiding place beneath one of the tables. He moved his wide-blade sword slightly, blocking the attack before it reached his shoulder.
Clever and dirty. You're a mare after my own heart, Miss Rarity.
Your heart?
Rarity said.
Don't be silly, darling. A blade to the heart would silence you and the game would be over.
Lioncourt pushed the table between them aside, and the duel was in earnest. Rarity seized the initiative, attacking from 4 different directions at once to take advantage of Lioncourt's fewer mage blades and to prevent him from formulating a plan. She had no delusions of being able to defeat him. He had spent a lifetime perfecting his dueling, while she had read through half the instructional book that he wrote and devoted a couple of hours each day for practice. Still, she had a good feeling that killing her would be a failure for him. She just needed to hold her own, and she would come out of this having helped her friends. Mage blades flickered quickly through the air, glinting as they caught the few beams of sunlight that the closed curtains allowed. Lioncourt knocked away 2 of Rarity's mage blades with a single sweep of his wide-bladed sword, then stabbed at her through the hole in her defense. She hopped to the side, dodging the lightning-quick thrust from his pointed sword.
Too much movement,
Lioncourt clicked his tongue. His curved blade was already positioned where Rarity ended up, and struck. The weapon spun swiftly, and a sharp pain to her side nearly made Rarity drop her weapons. She felt a trickle of blood run down her torso, just past her shoulders.
First cut is mine.
Where is Rainbow Dash?
Rarity asked.
She's still in Equestria.
That's not fair,
Rarity said. She used two of her blades to smash aside his parrying sword, then stabbed at him from his left and right. Lioncourt shrugged.
I've broken none of the established rules.
He caught the stabs with his remaining swords, then used his parrying blade to smash Rarity's blades towards her. They were inches from her face before she regained control. It was his turn to go on an offensive. All three weapons whirled above him as he advanced, forcing Rarity to take a few steps back. The curved sword spun and danced through the air, advancing towards Rarity only to float back when she moved her blades to block. His parrying blade suddenly lunged, smashing into three of her weapons in a violent push. She struggled to keep it back, using three of her blades just to do so. As she had feared, his thrusting sword buried a quarter-inch of its blade into her right foreleg.
Second cut.
Rarity stepped back.
Where in Equestria?
She asked between pants.
That would be difficult to pinpoint,
Lioncourt replied.
They're moving, after all. Consider that they captured your friend at the edges of Canterlot, and that they're moving south. They're probably almost past the Everfree Forest at this point. They'll certainly be avoiding places like Appaloosa.
South,
Rarity thought.
They're taking her south. But why did he say they? Doesn't he mean Longstride?
She took another step back and winced when she leaned on her foreleg.
Who are they?
She asked.
One question too many,
Lioncourt replied. His blades swept past her in a confusing array of slashing and spinning. She tried to keep them back desperately, but a second cut appeared on her torso.
There, remedied. As for your question, why the Ophidite that Longstride is working with, of course, along with her motley band of pony slaves.
Rarity stepped up on her attack. It was clear now that she didn't have the strength to defend against him, blade for blade. He swung and recovered with speed and ease. She was panting and bleeding, and it looked like he was only warming up. His parrying blade smashed into her defense again, while his curved blade spun behind her. She answered by jumping directly in front of Lioncourt, with all four blades at the ready. His parrying blade flew past her, leaving a small gash near her tail. She grit her teeth and swung all four blades at him. Lioncourt answered with a hoof to her snout, sending her tumbling backwards and knocking down several tables.
That's two questions,
Lioncourt said as he looked at the gash near her tail and her cut lip.
3,
Rarity said with a smile. Blood ran down Lioncourt's cheek and soaked into his beard. One of her blades had cut open a wound from just beneath his eye to his jaw.
Excellent, Lioncourt said. Ask away.
What is Black Rose's final goal?
I don't know.
Rarity's eyes narrowed at the answer.
I speak truly,
Lioncourt said.
No pony knows Black Rose's final goal. Not her thorns, not even her beloved.
Then what are her short-term goals?
To strengthen the elements of harmony or replace them as seen fit, and to make sure the eternal herd doesn't destroy all of pony kind.
What does she need the elements of harmony for?
To protect Equestria.
Again with the vague answers.
I know! Such an amusing game.
Lioncourt suddenly rushed Rarity, leaving her little time so much as to raise her weapons. His front hoofs flashed forward, forcing her to weave from side to side. His blade slashed and thrust in concert with his hoof strikes, all but transforming him into a whirling storm of hooves and steel. 2 more cuts, deep ones this time, appeared across Rarity's right side. Horrendous pain surged through her legs, making them wobble. She understood the increase in his pace and the severity of her wounds. Lioncourt had decided that he had answered enough questions and wanted the game to end. She stepped back to catch her breath.
2 more,
she said between gasps for air.
Ask quickly, Lioncourt said. You look ready to faint. It would be a pity to suffer wounds meaninglessly.
Why play this game in the first place?
A simple exercise in giving, my dear element of generosity. Your blood, for information. How many cuts and how much pain will you take to help your cause? Sacrifice separates the true givers from the false ones. It takes faith as well. Consider that I might be a worthless liar in the end, so that all your cuts have been in vain. Finally, I just had to duel with a mageblade wielder. I had feared that the art died with me. You cannot fathom how your very existence gladdens my heart.
What about...
Rarity stumbled as her vision began to blur.
Not yet,
she thought.
What about that sealed alicorn and this foul weapon business?
Equestria will need the foul weapon soon,
Lioncourt answered.
Mortals have few weapons against alicorns, and must use what's available. That's 3. Let's step up the pace, shall we?
His horn flashed, and he disappeared from sight. 2 possibilities quickly crossed Rarity's mind when her opponent vanished. He had either turned invisible or teleported. On instinct, she whirled to face her back, but the pain of her wounds and the blood loss left her body unable to follow. She stumbled again, just as she saw Lioncourt foreleg grasp her by the mane. Lioncourt pulled her close, inspecting her critically.
Just as I thought,
he said.
You look lovely in red.
He pushed her aside just in time to avoid a couple of swipes from her blades. 2 of her mage blades clattered to the floor. Concentrating on all 4 had proven too difficult.
I'd say this is the end of our duel. Thank you for the wonderful time, Ms. Rarity.
He suddenly turned his head to reveal a second cut that ran down the side of his neck.
And I owe you an answer. Till our next duel.
Wait,
Rarity said weakly. She took 1 more step before falling to her knees.
Stay still, Ms. Rarity,
Lioncourt said without looking back.
If you bleed out, your information will die with you.
He opened the door to the restaurant and started shouting.
Help! Help! There's been an attack in here!
Rarity tried to stand, but her vision continued to worsen, and the floor only seemed to come closer. She couldn't faint now. Others had to be told of where Rainbow Dash was heading.
Of all the worst things that could happen.
She collapsed completely.